Translator. Editor, Ninetales. As he ran with the herd of strange beasts, Chinmu saw that the land ahead of them suddenly sloped downwards into a valley. Ancient, untouched structures were strewn throughout the village, such as ruined palaces, an enormous plaza, and even majestic skyscrapers. So there really was remnant of civilization ahead of us, Chinmu exclaimed. At the very front of these decaying ruins was a towering gate that spanned the entrance to the valley. Marble pillars made up the bulk of this gate, dragons sculpted into the marble of each one so that they appeared to coil upward. The herd of strange beasts turned towards the gate, rushing toward the ruins. Chinmu inadvertently glanced upwards, and his scalp went numb. The darkness was flowing down into the valley like a wave of ink. "It's here!" He screamed internally. The darkness would soon reach the gate to the ruins and engulf it. As if they could sense this as well, the strange beasts running alongside, Chinmu, grew frantic. They rushed the gate with even more ferocity than before, ramming into and crushing other more careless beasts to death. Now, definitely wasn't the time to be calm and orderly. If they couldn't reach the ruins in front of them before the darkness arrived, they would die horrible deaths. Sprinting forward madly, Chinmu grabbed onto a behemoth's tail. Unaware of the human hitching a ride on it, the behemoth bolted forward, like a majestic black mountain, pushing aside and trampling all of the other beasts in its path. Some of the beasts that the behemoth left in its wake leaped forward and latched onto its tail as well, allowing it to bring them into the ruins. As he gripped the behemoth's tail, Chinmu looked below him and saw that all of the strange beasts that had been ferocious during the day were now trembling in fear. They clung to the behemoth's tail for their very lives. When he turned to look farther behind them, he also saw the 5 youths frantically chasing the behemoth, scrambling for the ruins. Finally, just before the darkness engulfed the gate, the behemoth burst through it, rushing into the ruins like a gust of wind. At that same exact moment, the 5 Lee Rivers disciples rushed in through the gate as well. However, of the 5 youths, only 3 of them managed to make it all the way through before the darkness engulfed it. Senior Brother Q, Senior Sister Ching, and 1 other youth made it through, but the other 2 disciples were a hair too late. Between the 2, one only managed to get an arm through the gate. The other only got the front half of his body through. The back half had been claimed by the darkness. As Senior Brother Q passed through the gate, he immediately tried to grab onto his 2 junior brothers. Taking hold of the visible arm, he forcefully pulled it towards him, causing a horrifying white skeleton to emerge from the darkness. Before Senior Brother Q could even reach for the other youth, he collapsed to the ground. The blood of the surviving disciples ran cold. Flesh, blood, and clothing still covered the front half of the youth, but all of the other half of his body had been stripped down to the bone, devoured by some unknown thing in the darkness. "Why does this darkness exist?" Senior Sister Ching screamed. "What lurks inside of it?" Senior Brother Q struggled to stay composed, then released a trembling breath. "Death is like a lamp going out. Our 2 junior brothers were brave and heroic. They died trying to vanquish a devil," he solemnly said. "That devil brat purposely came to these ruins at the last possible minute to take advantage of the darkness and use it to kill us. He's somewhere in these ruins. He won't be able to escape us with the darkness everywhere," said the youth who survived. Ruthless fury could be heard in his voice, a clear indication of how much the deaths of his fellow disciples affected him. "Let's find him. We'll avenge our junior brothers by chopping that devil brat into 1,000 pieces." "He's over there!" Senior Sister Ching exclaimed, seeing Chinmu jump from the tail of the behemoth. "You still have the audacity to try and escape after causing the deaths of 2 of my junior brothers, little devil?" Her accusations annoyed Chinmu. "You were the ones who chased me for no reason. How are their deaths my fault when it was you who decided to relentlessly chase me until nightfall? I didn't provoke you in any way, yet you pursued me with the intent of taking my life. Aren't I the one who's innocent here?" Senior Sister Ching gritted her teeth. "How dare you try to argue with me, you little devil?" "You're the devil!" Chinmu yelled, flying into a rage. "Granny and I only killed an elk to make clothing, and you called us devils. You guys killed an entire herd of them, Yet you still dare to say we're the devils in this situation? A dark expression appeared on Senior Brother Q's face, and he stepped forwards. The little devil is skilled at stirring up the doubt in our hearts. We don't need to waste time talking. We just need to kill him. As soon as he said this, the three of them prepared to attack. However, the moment they did, a low growl resounded throughout the ruins. They looked around to find out where it came from, and what they saw instilled shock in their hearts. Gathered throughout the ruins were hundreds of thousands of strange beasts. There were even plenty of beasts that were powerful enough to have their own territories. Every single beast looked down at the three remaining disciples maliciously, an ominous glint in all of their eyes. Realizing that something was wrong, Senior Brother Q retreated backward a step. Taking this as an indication that they weren't going to attack, the surrounding beasts went quiet. Qin Mu watched this scene in awe. During the day, the strange beasts of the Great Ruins normally fought over territory and hunted for prey. However, when night came, all of them existed in harmony with one another. It was a bizarre sight. Could these strange beasts have established a rule prohibiting conflict within this remnant of civilization? Qin Mu blinked as the thought occurred to him. Many of the beasts here were natural enemies, yet they left each other alone in these ruins, confirming Qin Mu's hypothesis. The villagers had always told him that strange beasts were intelligent. Considering the fact that the devil ape from earlier was capable of speech, constantly saying, "Youngin," or "die," the possibility of them creating such a rule was likely. Senior Brother Q reached the same conclusion as Qin Mu and released a sigh of relief, whispering, "Let's not make a move tonight. Once the sun rises, we'll kill him." Senior Sister Qing and the other youth nodded in agreement. After taking a good look at his surroundings, Qin Mu saw that the ruins were extremely spacious, like a city within the valley. There were strange beasts everywhere within the ruins. Everywhere except the plaza, hundreds of human skeletons filled the plaza. All of them wore luxurious clothes, and the manner in which they had died couldn't be easily ascertained. However, as he approached the plaza, Qin Mu was able to determine one thing. All of these people were female. The weird thing was, the women had been sitting cross-legged in an orderly fashion when they died. There were 15 rows of skeletons, and each row had 15 skeletons. It seemed as if they had been in the middle of meditating when a disaster struck, killing them so quickly that they didn't even have a chance to try and escape. Arriving at the front of the plaza, Qin Mu carefully examined the area and discovered that a skeleton sat in the front of the first row, clearly signifying that they had a leader. All of the skeletons, including the leader, were facing the same direction. They were oriented towards the towering gate in the distance. "Senior Brother, look!" Senior Sister Qing's eyes gleamed as she pointed at the skeletons in the plaza. There are precious artifacts in the hands of those skeletons. Every skeleton has one. Senior Brother Qi looked in the direction she was indicating, and his heart started pumping with excitement. Each skeleton held various artifacts, including treasure swords, horsetail whisks, jade pendants, priceless vases, and all kinds of other weapons. These precious artifacts glowed brilliantly, as if they had just been forged. All of them were clearly extraordinary treasures. The most eye-catching artifact among them was a pearl floating just above the palm of the leader skeleton. A hazy mist seemed to be swirling inside of that pearl. This plaza was actually an enormous treasure vault. If we could get our hands on those treasures, Senior Sister Qing whispered, her breathing becoming ragged. Even the treasure vault of Li River's 5 elders didn't contain a fraction of the wealth in this plaza. If the 3 of them could acquire these treasures, they would be able to start their own sect if they wanted to. Senior Brother Q's gaze flickered, and he laughed. "The heavens have decided to treat us well. 5th Junior Brother, go bring those precious artifacts back here." The youth did as he was told and entered the plaza. The moment he did, however, he saw the hairs of a horsetail whisk flutter gently. They suddenly started to slowly grow in length, and one strand moved towards him as if it were alive. That strand of horsehair resembled an extremely thin spirit snake as it lifted its tip to examine the youth. "Senior Brother Q." The youth's voice trembled as he called out to his senior, not daring to turn his head away. The owners of those precious artifacts are dead, senior brother Q said solemnly. Don't worry, fifth junior bro. Before senior brother Q could even finish his sentence, the strand of hair shot forwards like lightning and penetrated the eye of his fifth junior brother. The other strands of hair came flying over as well, digging into both of the boy's eyes. The youth opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. From his position nearby, Chin Mu watched as the youth's body quickly shriveled up, instantly becoming a desiccated corpse. The horsetail whisk didn't stop there, and instead continued to coil around the youth. Soon enough, even the skin and bones of the corpse melted away, leaving just a set of clothes and a pair of shoes on the ground. Translator. Ninesater, Ninetails. Sweat streamed down senior brother Q's brow as his throat rasped out. No wonder none have dared take those precious treasures. Junior sister Ching, each one bears its own spirit will. It will strike down any hand that is not its master's. A frigid shiver ran the length of senior sister Ching's spine, and she nodded again and again in hurried understanding. These treasures have always been here. Chin Mu barked, his words turning cold as iron. No one has taken them, not even the odd beasts, which plainly means they are perilous. You knew this, yet you still used your junior brother to probe the path. With a heart as venomous as yours, you are the true devil here. The devil comes again to sow doubt among us. Senior brother Q said, shaking his head, sorrow painted deep upon his face. What do you know of the bond between me and my junior brother? A little devil will ever be a little devil. You measure my heart with your devil heart, so naturally you deem me as sinister as you. I shall not quarrel with you further. When dawn arrives, I will send you on your way. Chin Mu knit his brows. This senior brother Q was indeed crafty and ruthless. If he could make use of his junior brother's life, then he certainly would not allow Chin Mu to leave these ancient ruins alive. Yet for Chin Mu, misfortune lay in that senior brother Q was overwhelmingly strong. Chin Mu could not possibly overcome him, not to mention that powerful senior sister Ching stood at his side as well. All at once, the earth began to tremble, and the ruins shuddered with it. The strange beasts let out long, anxious howls as they recoiled back into the spots they had seized throughout the region. Every one of them stared toward the gate at the fore of the ruins, their faces brimming with dread and fear. What are these strange beasts afraid of? The instant the thought rose, a darkness of terrifying density surged toward the gate like a raging flood. Chin Mu staggered back in alarm. Yet he saw that something like an unseen barrier lay upon the gate, blocking the darkness. The darkness battered frantically at the barrier, seeking to break through. The barrier twisted and warped beneath the continual pounding, but it did not shatter. The darkness warped along with it, at times taking the shape of razor-edged claws, at times becoming drifting wisps of smoke, and at times turning into innumerable sharp spikes. It shifted without end. Then, without warning, the ceaseless pounding of darkness against the barrier ceased. Silence ruled. After a time, the barrier that had been twisted and distorted began to stretch. The darkness pressed into the barrier until it formed a deep indentation shaped like a face. It was unimaginably vast, its brow filling the sky of the valley while its chin bore down upon the earth. All the strange beasts within the ruins lay cowering low to the ground. None dared move, not even a hair's breadth. They did not even dare to look straight at that face of darkness. Upon the face were 3 eyeballs, blacker than pitch. The moment Chin Mu looked upon them, his whole body turned icy, as though his very soul were about to be dragged away into the darkness. From that face of darkness, words suddenly streamed forth. Chike duo, samoye, bore bore samoye, chike duo bore samoye. It spoke in an unknown tongue, its voice deep and vibrating. That vibration came because it sounded as though many voices had been blended together into one. A strange force poured out of the sound, causing the earth in the ruins to quake without pause. Cracks and other signs of decay across the palaces and pillars scattered throughout the valley widened and widened, forcing many to topple and collapse under the shaking. When rubble began to drop from the gate due to the trembling, it was plain that it would not hold much longer. Yet at that very moment, a brilliant radiance flared from the plaza. The luminous pearl that floated above the skeleton leader's palm began to pour forth an ever-brightening light. Catching the glow behind him, Chinmu instantly turned, only to see the pearl rise up into the sky. The light it cast was a riot of different, blazing colors. That fierce, many-hued radiance shone down upon the hundreds of skeletons. Each and every skeleton swept by that light abruptly stirred into life. Chinmu stared, mouth agape, at the scene. To his eyes, the skeletons bathed in the light no longer resembled skeletons. They looked like graceful maidens of living flesh and blood, lips rosy as spring petals, garments bright and fiery. These maidens sat upon the plaza exactly where the skeletons had been. Their leader, likewise a woman, had been clutching the luminous pearl that now drifted slowly upward into the air. Just like the face of darkness, the maidens began to chant in a strange tongue, equally incomprehensible. Yi po shu po sananjun he shi, guanming duanjing wu si jiang yu. Their voices rang softly together as one. The voice within the darkness gradually swelled, and the trembling of the valley grew more violent. As the darkness around the ruins pressed in from every direction, the voices of the maidens became clearer and more forceful. The luminous pearl hovering aloft then released wave after wave of radiance, shining into the darkness and scattering it like smoke. The voice of darkness and the united voices of the maidens were like gods and devils locked in a contest of words, each side repeatedly seizing the advantage only to lose it again. At the same time, darkness and light visibly collided with one another. This scene, beyond imagining, flooded Chinmu's mind. Though he had grown up in the great ruins, this was the first time he had witnessed something so astonishing. This voice, he murmured, a sudden thunderclap of realization washing over him. The maiden's combined voice reminded him of the god voice he had heard when he tried to shatter the spirit embryo wall. Both carried the same innate grace. He could faintly sense that the words of the two voices were different, yet their overall feel was akin. Whenever he attempted to break the spirit embryo wall with his vital chi, Chinmu could hear an indistinct, solemn divine voice echoing from the 9 heavens above. Each time that voice rang out, his vital chi would retreat of its own accord from the spirit embryo wall, unable to pierce it. Now, the two voices were still locked in fierce contention. Each was mighty in its own manner, and neither could hold supremacy for long. The devil voice that rolled from the darkness was powerful and terrifying, while the maiden's collective voice was divine, melodious, and unyielding. Each time the devil voice seemed on the verge of seizing lasting advantage, the maidens always managed to overcome it by unraveling its chant. Yet the devil voice would invariably surge back after losing ground, falling back, then erupting again like a wild and majestic flood. Both voices were singular in their own ways. Chinmu became wholly absorbed in their ceaseless struggle as he listened to the maiden's united voice, when an idea suddenly sprang into his mind. The devil voice is battling the god voice. This god voice is very similar to the one that keeps me from breaking the wall. Perhaps I can use the devil voice to counter that voice. Chinmu became utterly convinced that this was a sound path, and the more he considered it, the more excited he grew. So long as he learned the words the devil voice was chanting, he could speak them the instant the god voice resounded within his mind. In doing so, he would counter the voice from the 9 heavens above, and his vital chi would be able to smash through the spirit embryo wall. So long as he could break his spirit embryo wall, with his overlord body and the overlord body 3 elixir technique, he would have no need to fear senior brother Ku and senior sister Qing. However, when his thoughts reached that point, he suddenly stiffened, as though a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head. If the voice in his mind truly was the voice of a god from the 9 heavens above, and he used words spoken by a devil's voice to counter it, would that not mean he was a devil sealed away by the gods? Could it be that senior brother Q and the others had been right from the start? Was he truly a little devil? No. Chinmu shook his head. If he were a devil, would his overlord body not be devilish as well? If that were so, why did everyone in the village call it an overlord body? Would not the name devil body be more fitting? Who cares whether my body is a devil body or an overlord body? First, I must break the spirit embryo wall. With the notion set firm in his heart, Chinmu set to work. He began by carving into memory every syllable the darkness voice chanted, along with the tone and the manner in which it spoke them. Only after he was certain he had grasped it all without error did Chinmu employ the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique to circulate his vital chi. As he drove his vital chi toward his spirit embryo wall, situated between his brows, he chanted the foreign words of the devil voice.